Hi everybody, welcome and thank you for joining me again. I meant to do so much more yesterday, but my daughter in Canada wanted to know what I needed so she can gift it to me for Mother's Day. I need shoes or trainers, something I could wear with socks or ankle boots or slippers. I think my slippers left the country along with the last sailboat belonging to the OIC. But this winter my feet are indeed cold, and no matter what I do, they only warm up when a Kira yellow dog lies on top of them, which only happens at night if I'm lucky. So she sent me some money for shoes and slippers for Mother's Day. Now, my eldest is a little worse than her mother. She sent the money night before last, and yesterday morning she already wanted to know whether we had gone shopping yet. So we knew she wouldn't stop, so we went. My usual haunt had nothing I wanted or liked, and expensive. Geez, I mean, I have limits what I'm prepared to pay for something I'm only going to wear at home. So on to the next shop. And I must tell you, I'm a one-shop girl. I hate shopping, and going from one shop to the other, not my style. But off we went. They had a little more variety, but I kid you not. Every shoe, every slipper I liked, not available in my size. I tried to convince my younger daughter to continue our search, well, today, but no way. She convinced me to do one more shop. Luckily, I found a pair of ankle boots and slippers in my size and at decent prices. I even had change left, but don't tell anyone, okay? So I'm very happy with my purchases and myself. Women usually love shopping. I don't. Not at all. Maybe on a good day, a second-hand store or a charity store or hardware store. Clothing and food, not my style. Everything else, really, I'm not joking, is a no-no for me. I hate it. I do it because I have to. Anyway, so the shopping took longer than expected. We found the one neighbor next to the road. His car broke down, so we also towed him home. But anyway, no harm, no foul. A members video went up, and I'm back here today. What is a day late between friends? Now, the first thing I have to say is if it was planned for Catherine to go to Italy during and over the period of Charles's speech at the opening of Parliament, to sort of soften it a bit, soften the backlash, whatever, well then, it worked very well because Catherine is just exquisite. And I'm not talking about what she was wearing. Nothing she wore was actually my taste. In my opinion, a little boring. The blue of the first suit, however, really suited her. But the beige ensemble the next day, not so much. But absolutely 100% never mind. Catherine was and is exquisite. She could have arrived naked or in a trash bag. Her kind, normal, compassionate, have I said normal, behavior, her true, real, dimpled smile. I mean, people are drawn to her like a moth to a flame, and children, geez, children laugh with her or they just simply melt into her. She's like a beacon of security for children. Now, I saw almost the same thing with Diana, But Diana also had a bit of a flirty and a naughty side, and Diana liked the cameras, okay? But there was always a little bit of something else with Diana that I can't exactly put my finger on. But then there is something completely different about Catherine, which I cannot put my finger on. Catherine, I know for a fact, is not a pushover. We know that when William could not make up his mind, she was not going to wait around just in case. No, she broke it off and carried on with her life. She does indeed discipline her children, and she knows where to draw the line. But knowing what I know, it is still hard to reconcile strict Catherine with soft Catherine. But indeed, according to everybody and everything I've ever spoken to, she is indeed both. She is strict, but she's also fair with genuine empathy, not the rapid blinking kind. Unfortunately, I think the best of Catherine the Great and her dear William may not be enough to save the monarchy from the damage done by Charles the Not-So-Great, his brother Andrew, his son Harry, and of course the appendages Meghan and Sarah. Of course, numerous other royals before them did not do any better, and it is also true that if that kind of behavior is indeed allowed to escalate, that it has to take a toll. It must at some point come to a halt and to finally face the checks and balances. The odds, which are not in the royal family's favour at the moment, although it may look like it due to the recent positive press. But if you doubt my words, then ask yourself, did Catherine's stunning looks, her faultless behavior, her it factor, stop people yesterday and the day before from talking about the King's speech or from being angry about Harry's supposed article about anti-Semitism? No, it didn't. Unfortunately, it didn't. In the past, the press would have piped down until the visit is over. But even there you can see the change in respect and discipline, because they didn't. They just carried on with that news. Of course, I think Harry obviously dropped that article because Catherine was doing so well in Italy. But we'll talk about that, I think, in a video to follow this one. Firstly, the King's speech in transcript is rather long. And much of it is blah, blah, bloody blah, word salad. Parliament and all these speeches should also be named NASA, not a straight answer. Okay, but never mind. To go through this speech word for word would be a huge waste of time. What is not a waste of time, however, is to read the various State Departments' review of this speech. And one of the first ones to be downloaded into the public domain is that of the Department of Justice. And of course, the report is on a bill carried over from 2025. I think also the most controversial of all. And it is indeed the Courts and Tribunals Bill. Good Lord. I wonder how many members of the British public actually know what it entails. In my not so humble opinion, it would be a huge, huge mistake to allow the bill to pass as they are presenting it at the moment. Firstly, restricting jury trials. removing a defendant's right to choose a jury trial and basically introducing judge-only trials for cases likely to receive, or rather where the positive sentence according to the sentencing guidelines would be 3 years or less, but also judge-only trials for technical and lengthy fraud and financial offences. Okay, now that is that, but everyone made a huge fuss about this jury trial thing. By December 2025, nearly 40 Labour MPs co-signed a letter to the Prime Minister declaring they were not prepared to support the proposed bill due to the limiting of jury trials. Well, my dears, thank God I continued reading, because what I do not see anyone talking about is this. Somewhere near the bottom, okay, and I quote, removing the automatic presumption of parental involvement when determining family court cases. Currently, the Children's Act 1989 requires the court to presume that, unless the contrary is shown, the involvement of a parent in a child's life will further that child's welfare. The bill will remove, listen carefully, the bill will remove that presumption so that courts no longer had to start from the presumption, although they may ultimately conclude that there should be such involvement. Wow, wow, wow. Now, my dears, this is something I would go to war for. Of course, family welfare has to investigate the importance or not of a parent's involvement, whether it would be positive or negative, before going to court. That evidence should be presented at court, and the judge should start with the presumption that a parent's involvement in a child's life would benefit the child. And if not, then it should be up to the investigators or the welfare to convince the judge that it wouldn't be. I mean, once you start dismissing parents and family ties, that is the day society falls apart. The only other item which stood out to me is with regards to the separation centres, but the proposed changes are not tabulated and therefore I cannot really comment on it. If you don't know what these separation centres are, that is where it's like a special prison where they keep people charged with terrorism, for instance, where they still pose a danger to others. Okay. As for the Department of Health, abolishing Health Watch, blah, 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 a lot of restructuring, but what I feel very odd about is this. The government wants to legislate for a single patient record, which, I mean, I would assume that's something like a central record of each patient's medical details, which basically also means that all patients' medical records would be stored in one place. Ew. For me, this seems to fit in with the whole digital ID debacle. Something else, which was indeed announced in the King's speech, and something the majority of England said no to, yet they're going ahead with it anyway. It does not make sense. Anyway, according to the Constitution, well, such as it is in Britain, which is not much. The king and his courtiers are issued a copy of the king's speech, well, a draft, well in advance, in order for the king to discuss with the prime minister during his weekly audience. Friends, you will notice my voice going away from time to time. I'm still recovering from the flu. Anyway, under the British constitutional concept of the trio of rights, the sovereign has, number one, the right to be consulted, number two, the right to encourage, and number three, the right to warn. Now, don't imagine that the king can strike anything he does not like from this speech. He can't, okay? All they can do, being the king and his courtiers, is to make some linguistic tweaks to fact check, and the only contribution from the palace comes in the other measures section at the end, where the monarch will usually mention upcoming state visits, etc., etc. In other words, that small section is more or less reserved for monarchy business, which it appears there were not much of this year. Anyway, the nasty reality, though, is that the monarch has to read it all, even if he does not agree with a proposed policy in the speech. So, knowing that, reading it once again, reading the legalities once again, for me, this whole palaver has become empty pageantry. The spectacle of a monarch in a gold carriage reading a speech they did not write. In reality, the government could simply publish a PDF of their plans and save everyone the commute. In the last years of her life, the Queen opted to arrive at Parliament in her Bentley state limousine. She made one exception in 2019, but in the same year, after a general election, she reverted back to the Bentley. The Queen also stopped wearing the crown and robes in 2017, allegedly because it was very heavy and a burden on her tiny frame. But that is neither here nor there. The argument for the monarch to continue the tradition has always been not about power, but about restraint and continuity. In the words of the official paperwork, the king occupies the highest seat in the land, so the prime minister cannot. A supposed constitutional safety catch. But if you think about it, it is all bollocks, gaslighting, and a scam, isn't it? A politician represents, or is supposed to represent, at least 40 to 50% of his constituents. The king, however, is meant to represent 100% of his citizens. Now I'm asking you, does King Charles represent 100% of the people of Britain? He certainly does not. 80%? Still no. 70%? Heck no. 60%? Still no. As a matter of fact, the king's approval rate is much lower than reflected by government polls. But even that is indeed not the point, is it? If the king has no say in what he reads to Parliament, no veto power to actually stand up for the people or on behalf of the people, then what is the point? Charles is very out of touch with the realities of life for Britain and for the rest of his realm. But even if he wasn't, if he cannot do anything or say anything, just dutifully cross the T's and dot the I's of someone else's words, spending $1 million or $2 million on a parade for a 10-minute speech, feels and looks completely ignorant and out of touch, particularly out of touch with the struggles of everyday citizens. When I look at the bills Parliament wish to pass and what it would mean for the British people, and I look at Charles, all petulant, not about what it would do to his people, but about how reading it would make him look, then I wonder whether perhaps he's looking down his nose at us, the great unwashed, and maybe share the sentiments of his father as stated in his 1988 book, in the foreword of his book at least, where he wrote, "In the event I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus to contribute something to solving overpopulation." That's what Prince Philip said. Is that what Charles is thinking? Now, as much as I sincerely adore Catherine and her natural empathy and charm, and William, who appears stronger than his father and far brighter, I think that each time the king appears to be his spoiled, petulant self, and each time Harry opens his mouth or appears as his own petulant self, or Andrew or Fergie causes any more drama, it chips away at the previously impenetrable veneer of the monarchy. And I fear the hurt which is going to spill, the backlash, the ugly truth. And I so wish I, or anyone else for that matter, could indeed shield William and his family from that. But indeed it is not up to us. We are not able. Anyway, my dears, that is it. I will be back soon on some more Harry and some more other things in the news. So until then, please take good care of yourselves and stay safe. Bye.